Hi, I'm Jason Houtsma, guitar instructor for worshipartistry.com. You may have noticed recently that in our lessons, our tone chapters are getting a little bit longer. The reason for that is we're actually starting to show you the pedal board that we're using and each setting that is on each pedal, and kind of talking through reasonable facsimiles to get those same tones. In the past, I was a lot more general, and you've made it clear that you want me to be more specific. So that's what we're doing. In this video, I wanted to just give you a quick rundown of the gear that I'm using, just so that when you see those, so when you get a glimpse of that pedal board, you kind of know what each pedal does. I'm going to go in a lot more detail on each pedal on the blog, so I'll do a specific post for each one, giving you a lot more detail, some different settings for them and that sort of thing. But this, I wanted to give you an overall rundown of the whole thing. So first, I'm going to tell you, you already know I'm playing through my AC30, and this is the tone that I'm starting out with. Just a little bit of overdrive from the amp. Nothing too exciting, and that's usually how I always start songs. But let's take a look at what's under the hood. For my board, I'm using Digital Audio Labs stomp blocks, and basically you can see that there's actually 4 individual blocks, and the thing that's cool about stomp blocks is you can actually attach them. You can buy as many of them as you want and attach them in any way that you really choose to. You can have your mic stand in the middle, you can have different pieces, different places, but I'm using it all just in a big rectangle because that's what works best for me and also looks good on camera. For my power source underneath, I'm using a Decibel 11 hot stone, which is powering all the pedals I have. It just, out of all the things I looked at, it really gave the most diversity, and it is also super quiet, which I was very excited about as well. I should mention that in the blog post below, I'll actually give you links to all these things so you can do your own research on them if you'd like, and check them out. But that's what we're building everything on, right? So next I've got my guitar, and I'm running into, what else? My tuner. First stop on our pedal board. Guitar is going straight into our chromatic tuner. Probably the most important pedal that you have on your board. And why do we put the chromatic tuner first? It's because we're trying to tune our guitar, not our guitar affected by a bunch of pedals. So having it right at the front of the chain, for one, easily cuts off the signal, and 2, makes it easiest for us to get the cleanest signal going into the tuner. From the tuner, I'm going into my little Big Muff Pi Electro-Harmonix fuzz pedal. Now, we don't really get to use this a ton, but when we do, it's a whole lot of fun. From our fuzz, we're going into our Earthquaker Devices speaker cranker. Now, I love this pedal. I used to use a boost pedal, but I decided to go with the speaker cranker because it basically acts like a boost. In that it creates that tube sounding overdrive, while at the same time it doesn't crank the volume near as much as an actual boost pedal does. This is not a boost, they're very clear about that. This is an overdrive. But it just gives me some light overdrive on the guitar. From there, you can't see it, but the cable winds around and goes into our volume pedal. Volume pedal can pretty much go anywhere in the chain, and I've had this volume pedal obviously forever. It's beat to garbage, but it still holds up pretty nicely. The main thing about a volume pedal is you want it to be behind all your delay effects, because you want your delays to work what's happening from the volume pedal. Next, from our volume pedal, we are going into our Palisades Overdrive. This also by Earthquaker Devices. This is actually a multiple overdrive. It has basic, it has a second gain channel, and then it also has a boost. And you can see by all those knobs and dials that there is a lot to it. And we will definitely dedicate a full lesson to just using that. But whenever we go through the lesson, like I said earlier, we'll always be kind of talking how to get reasonable facsimiles. Next, we have our organizer. So from my Palisades, I'm going up to the organizer. What is the organizer? Because essentially what it does is it adds an octave up and an octave down, and there are a ton of things that you can do with this as well. But for now, we're just going to say that it adds octaves. Okay, and this is the kind of thing that you always want this to be after your overdrive. Makes a big difference. From the organizer, I'm actually going into the amp. Now, that's where the preamp happens, and we know that the preamp comes before the speaker. So the preamp is where your tubes are and kind of really creates the tone of the amp. Once you're in the amp, this little box right here, this is the A switch, puts on reverb. Really light. I use other things for reverb, and so I just keep a real light reverb on the amp. And then the B switch is the tremolo. Both of those come from the amp. From there, I go into the effects loop. So I actually send the signal back from the preamp into these next effects. So from the amp, we go straight into our dispatch master. Now, our dispatch master is both a delay and a reverb. And quickly, I will say, this is the delay that I've always been looking for. It's a nice combination of the delay and reverb. You can use it really subtly or really heavily affect your signal. Once again, this is another pedal that I will be going into great detail in another lesson. From there, I'm running into my Disaster Transport Senior, which is 2 more delays. Now, you don't need to have 2 delays, but this just allows me to have some options. This uses a modulation delay on that top row, and then I can also add another delay and reverb with delay B. It's great for some of those newer Bethel Live tunes, having that modulation. Some people like to use choruses and whatnot. I like to have just a little bit of modulation on my delay, and the Disaster Transport Senior does that. I don't use it a ton, but when I do, I'll go into great detail once again talking about how you can mimic that. Finally, for my Disaster Transport Senior, I'm going into my Holy Grail reverb, which I've had forever also. And this is just a basic big, I usually use it for hall reverb. You can do spring, and there's also this weird effect called flurb, which is really not very usable. But it's great for those kind of hill songs. Some of that tremolo picking, that sort of thing. And then from that reverb, we go back to our amp. So that's what's going on the pedal board. As I said in the beginning, you don't need to have all these pedals to make all the sounds that we go through, and I'll go into great detail on how I get those tones in all the song lessons. So don't get intimidated. I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of all the different things I'm using so that when you see me talking in the tone section, you know what I'm talking about. And as I said, I'll go into a lot more detail with each pedal individually on the blog as well, so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, quit playing with your dials and go learn some songs.